and welcome back to another episode of the Walk It Off podcast on Walk It Off Wednesday. We took an off week last week, but we're back this week, and I'm more excited than ever. For those of you guys who don't know me, I'm currently a Colorado native, so I'm a big Nuggets guy. And if you guys pay attention to basketball, they just come back from their second 3-1 deficit of the 2020 playoffs, but that's besides the point. Baseball podcast will stick to the baseball side of things. Let's cover two things, but before we get into that, the guest appearance of Kenny Rosenberg. He's a pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays organization. Let's talk about the second no-hitter of the 2020 season thrown by Alec Mills. He is a Chicago Cubs pitcher. Like I mentioned, it's the second one of the 2020 season. The first one was actually thrown by Lucas Giolito. He's a Chicago White Sox pitcher. We talked about that in a previous episode. Make sure you guys go check that out if you haven't already. So that's kind of crazy how, both no-hitters this season were thrown by Chicago-based teams, one being the Chicago White Sox and obviously Alec Mills currently with the Chicago Cubs. And I saw something, I did some research, and it said Alec and his wife, to celebrate Sunday he returned from Milwaukee, which was where he threw his no-hitter. The Sunday he returned from Milwaukee to Chicago, him and his wife just ordered some of the most iconic pizzeria places in Chicago. So Christian, you're obviously a pitcher in your career. You're obviously retired now. But what would you do if you threw a no-hitter in your career, and who would you say you maybe would have called first after throwing a no-hitter in your career?
Well, I would think that if it was anybody worth calling, they would have been watching.
Yeah.
But I want to say, I'm just trying to think, like, when I first got called up or found out I was going up, I believe I called my mom first.
Okay.
But what would I do to celebrate a no-hitter? Man, that's kind of tough. There's something that I really like about him going and just getting some pizza.
Yeah.
Especially in Chicago. Like, there's something about that. It's kind of like, yeah, that's appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably the best tasting pizza ever, without the no-hitter, but even more so. Sometimes like simple is good. So, oh man, I'd probably go get sushi. That's my favorite. It's my favorite thing to eat. So,
okay.
It's somewhat normal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if I was with Seattle, there's probably a couple of good sushi places around there. So that's probably what I'd do.
It changes based on where you're pitching.
Yeah. Denver. Oh, you know what? In Denver, one of my favorite places was, I can't remember it now. It was an oyster bar, Jake's. Do you know what that is?
I haven't been there yet. No.
It's in downtown. It's like a couple blocks from Coors Field. Okay. I want to say it's Jake's Oyster Bar. That place is legit.
Okay.
I'd probably go there if I was in Denver.
Okay. And you also mentioned before we started recording, you were throwing partners with Alec. When was that? Was that in the minors, or what season was that?
That was 2019 when I had a brief stint with the Cubs in spring training.
Oh yeah.
Alec and I talked, decent amount. We threw together a couple times, but I was just checking, scores and stuff, and checking on some of my buddies that were still playing that day, or that are still playing. And I opened up the Cubs thing. I was like, oh damn, someone threw a no-hitter.
Yeah.
I figured it was, one of the bigger name guys. I was like, oh damn, Alec, that's awesome.
I threw with him.
Yeah, I threw with him. Yeah, that's especially I think it was his 15th career start.
Oh, okay.
He's had more than 15 games, but I think in terms of career starts, I think I saw it was only his 15th. So that's pretty cool. Reminds me of another teammate I had, Chris Heston. He threw perfect game, I believe. Perfect game or no hitter? Can't remember. I think he hit someone. No hitter.
Oh, okay.
But he did, that was in his rookie year. So, kind of a small world. And then Giolito went to Harvard Westlake High School in California, which is in the same league that my high school was in. So, very small little world.
Yeah, it all just connected. It's crazy how these 2020 no-hitter throwers have just, connected with you in some shape or form. But now that we wrapped up talking about the Alec Mills no-hitter, let's transition into talking about the current playoff picture for the MLB season as of September 15th. So that would be yesterday. This is premiering on Wednesday. For the AL, it goes the White Sox, the Rays, the A's, the Twins, the Yankees, the Astros, the Blue Jays, then the Indians, with the Blue Jays holding the number 1 wild card spot and the Indians holding the number 2 wild card spot. And then for the NL, it goes Dodgers, as expected, Cubs, Braves, Padres, Marlins, Cardinals, Phillies, Giants, and then the Phillies holding the wild card number 1 spot, and then the Giants holding the wild card number 2 spot. Something that you projected was the Colorado Rockies to win the 2020 World Series, and they're only 1 game out of the wild card spot. They have the talent to, bring that talented team to the World Series eventually if they stay consistent. If they're pitching and defense as well as they're hitting all meshes together and is all consistent at the same time. They have the talent capability to do that. Do you kind of still stand with that take, and do you still stand with the Rockies, and do you still believe in them to possibly be a World Series contender? Maybe not even be a World Series contender, but go deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm sticking with it. I mean, they're not out of it. They've gone through, a rough patch that's lasted probably longer than they wanted.
Right.
I saw John Gray just went down today. So, there are definitely some question marks. But, somebody's going to need to step up, and, they're going to have to, like you said, mesh together and get everything going. But, of all the seasons where you can take on some water like that, this is one, and like you said, they're only 1 game out. So yeah, I think they're still very, very well positioned to take advantage of it. So it's just about getting hot at the right time, and so we'll see if that happens. But it'll be interesting with all these other teams, having at least a shot at the playoffs.
Right.
Who's gonna get hot at the right time? And I also saw that they're considering keeping this format moving forward in future seasons. So that would definitely add another dynamic to the playoffs every year.
Yeah, and you see how much people are talking about the Padres right now. That's, if we turn back time, that's how much they were talking about the Rockies when they got off to their 11-2 start. They're one of those teams that are so entertaining, and their talent level is out of the waters, that they have the capability to be talked about around the league and around the world. The Padres are being talked about right now because they're on a really hot stint. They didn't get off to a hot start like the Rockies did, and they weren't playing like they are right now, and that's why people weren't talking about them. Eventually, the Padres will slow down. We predicted that the Rockies will eventually slow down, which they did, and they're obviously in a bad slump right now. And I think if a bad slump hits the Padres at the wrong time, maybe an injury hits them late in the regular season, and even possibly early playoffs, in a season-ending injury happens for Hosmer, Machado, Tatis, any of those guys, Will Myers, that's going to be huge devastation for them, and that could just lead to a huge slump, kind of like it did for the Rockies. And if the Rockies get hot at the right time towards the tail end of the season, they're only 1 game out, like I just mentioned. They can get into that playoff picture, wild card spot, possibly even above that, if they get off to a hot enough start towards the tail end of the season. We're obviously approaching that time of the season, but if they get off to a hot start again, they definitely could be like the Padres, where they're the most talked about team in the MLB.
Yeah, and if the Padres slip back into, or they're in one of those wild card series, the 3-game series, and they have a couple bad games, see you later.
Yeah, right.
So as long as you can, all you can shoot for is a chance to go for it, and then it just comes down to who plays the best when it matters.
Yep.
So it's anybody's game still, for sure.
Yeah, and baseball is one of those sports where it's like there's no guarantee win for a game. You see one of these amazing teams match up against a poor team, kind of like the Angels versus the Rockies a few days ago, I think it was. The Angels obviously came on top, so it's really anyone's game, and that doesn't just go for a regular season game. That really doesn't have a huge effect on their whole season as a whole, but that could go as a playoff game 7. You see the Padres playing someone in the NLDS or the World Series even possibly.
Yeah.
Game 7, they have a poor performance. There goes the World Series chances for the 2020 season. But without further ado, let's transition into the Kenny Rosenberg appearance. He's a Tampa Bay Rays prospect. He attended Cal State Northridge in California. He grew up in California, was born there as well. So let's transition into that guest appearance now.
What's up, everybody? Today we're joined by Kenny Rosenberg. He's a left-handed pitcher, currently in the Tampa Bay Rays organization. He was drafted at Cal State Northridge in 2016 by the Rays in the 8th round and has since spent some time pretty much every minor league affiliate, but is definitely progressing quickly through the organization. Most recently as a swingman at AA Montgomery, where he went 11-4 with a 3.43 ERA through 134 innings pitched. So, definitely knocking on the door to the big leagues. Hopefully. Kenny, thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Awesome.
Yeah, so what's your season looked like so far with all this craziness going on?
It's been extra crazy for me, which I'll get into a little bit. But just as from the baseball side of things, it's been a grind. I know a lot of guys are in the same boat that I am, where I wasn't included in that 60-man roster. Haven't gotten to pitch in a meaningful game in, over a year now. So it's been really weird, and it's been really hard to stay focused a lot of the time, because you don't have that light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
No finish line, so to speak. So, it's hard to stay locked in, every day, every week. But that's been the goal, is just to make each day count and try to improve as much as I would during a normal season.
Right. Were you kind of just going through it, like trying to make like a game-like environment at certain points, almost like, so I was thinking, like, how would I have done this? Would I have thrown in sim games like every 5 days, something like that? Is that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah. So when I was I'm shut down throwing now. But from March up until, around second week in August, I was in West Palm Beach, Florida. My fiance and I, once spring training got shut down, we decided to stay in Florida. Obviously being from California, that would have been, we would have had to trek home. And at the time, California was a lot worse with COVID than Florida was. And the restrictions were looser, and as bad as it sounds, I want to take advantage of that.
Right.
And so I was able to train. I've been training remotely with Cressy Sports Performance, and I've been doing that stuff on my own. But since I was there, we were like, all right, screw it, let's just go, and I'll just train there. And we didn't know if it was going to be a month or 6. And obviously, it ended up being the latter. But
Right.
So they were awesome. They kept the gym open and available as much as they could. They bent the rules as much as they could, while also still following the guidelines and just trying to do work for us. And there was a really good group of guys there that we were able to throw sides and lives ultimately during the spring and summer. So basically, I would go one live a week and one side, and treat the lives like my outings. I got built up as many as 3 innings at one point. Never got, more volume than that, which I was hoping to, but the way things panned out, I wasn't able to. But yeah, I was able to get lives and throw sides like normal. And then I was able to train a lot harder than I would have in the gym, just because of the schedule, it.
Right.
You don't have the same facilities when you're on the road. And it's a grind, so like throughout the course of a season, I'm throwing so many innings, and it's like just being in the weight room isn't as important.
Right.
In games. So I think from a physical standpoint, I was able to get some really good work in.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're obviously not pitching right now, obviously, because there's no official season as of now as far as minor league baseball goes, and you unfortunately weren't put on that 60-man roster. What is your progression gonna look like, when you start getting some news on a minor league season and going into spring training? What is your progression gonna look like as far as pitch counts go and pitching off the mound goes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would love to be able to answer it. Which, obviously I don't think anybody really knows the answers of how things are going to go over the next 6 months. I'm done trying to guess. But for me personally, the mindset that I've taken the last 2 off seasons, which I'm going to carry through this one, is I'm treating my off season like I'm preparing for a big league season. So I'm not even worried about the minor league season, as bad as that sounds. I'm really just singularly focused on preparing like a big leaguer.
Right.
And, if that opportunity presents itself, obviously, like, being with the Rays, we have a really good org, a lot of really good talent. So, there's 29 other teams out there, and, it sounds bad, and I don't necessarily, have the intention of playing for a different team, but you just have to be ready, and you have to prepare as if, you're going to pitch in the big leagues. I mean, there's no other mindset to have. So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. And if we do get a minor league season or a minor league spring training or whatever it's going to look like, then I'll be well prepared for that as well.
Okay. And you were born in California, and like Christian mentioned in the intro, you went on to attend Cal State. You went on to attend Cal State Northridge. How much did it mean to you to stay in state for college baseball and stay somewhat close to home and your family? And how big of a role did Cal State being in state have on you attending Cal State?
So it's more complicated to answer that. It's funny. So yeah, I grew up in California in the Bay Area, and I want to play college baseball like more than anything. Like, baseball is everything I ever wanted to do. So college baseball after high school is obviously the next logical step. And I didn't have any offers, Division I, not even a roster spot. So I was kind of in limbo a little bit. So it wasn't actually like I had a choice and I wanted to stay in California and go play at CSUN. It wasn't like that at all. It was like literally my only D1 roster spot. So I was like, he said, Coach Moore, when he got the job there, I sent him like a funny text like, hey, I heard there's a new, pretty good head coach at Northridge. They just hired, like, put in a good word for me kind of thing. And, like,
did you know him before?
Yeah, I knew him when he was at University of San Francisco.
Oh, gotcha.
He coached there, and he was kind of talking about me going to a junior college and then maybe seeing how that went. But I was pretty underdeveloped at that point. I was a late bloomer, and so yeah, when he got the job at Northridge, he was like, "Would you come?" And I was like, yeah, "Where else am I going to go?" So
I'm holding out.
So to answer your question, no, it wasn't necessarily my first choice. It was my only choice, but it played a huge role in my development. I wouldn't have it any other way. I know a lot of people say that, but it's the truth, and Coach Moore was awesome. The staff there was awesome. The guys, the teammates, the camaraderie, and playing in that conference, going up the state, it was really good competition. Long Beach State, Cal State Fullerton, UC Santa Barbara, Shane Bieber and I were the same draft class, so getting to pitch, in the same conference as some of those guys was really beneficial for me.
You forgot Irvine.
UCI, sorry.
No.
We had a World Series when I was, I think it was my freshman year, 14, 13 maybe.
14. Yeah, we went in
Ross was a
2007. And then, I want to say there was another one in there after I left.
Is he still pitching? Is he still affiliated? Andrew Morales, do you know if he's still I think he was with the Cardinals. I never even met the guy. I just remember when I was a freshman, he was just the guy there.
Yeah, he was a stud. I'm not sure. I think he is. But I noticed, so you take me through like your college career. So your freshman year, it looked like you didn't throw too much, which I didn't either. A lot of freshmen don't. And then you redshirted, right?
Yeah, so I had kind of the rare sophomore red shirt. It was medical. I had a lower back injury, pretty minor, all things considered, but it was really bad timing. It flared up really bad in January.
Right.
About like 6 to 8 weeks of like no activity, so it just put me out for the season. But yeah, my freshman year, I was like a lefty specialist, and I still am, a little more comfortable facing righties. So it was like a terrible role for me. But in hindsight, Coach Moore always had a rhyme and a reason for what he did, um, and it made me a lot tougher mentally because, I remember I had one outing. We were at TCU, and it was sick to travel to TCU as a freshman. It was so cool, and like they had the girls dancing on the dugouts and stuff. It was dope. I got on the pitch. The only time I got in the whole series was to face a lefty. We were down like 3-1 in like the sixth. It was like not an important spot. Nobody was on, like one out maybe. They just brought me in to face a lefty just to get some experience, I think. And Coach Moore calls pitches from the dugout, and you're allowed to shake them off, but you have to like be really convicted, right? And you got to execute. You can't shake them off and throw a dud. So I want to throw a 3-2 banger, and I shook to it, and I put it right in the guy's back, and then I didn't pitch for about 2 weeks. So that was like a microcosm for my freshman season.
Gotcha.
And then I went to summer ball, played in Yakima, had a really good summer. Was up to like 92. It was the first time I'd thrown that hard, and was supposed to be like a Saturday or Sunday starter actually. After that, after I turned a corner, slacked off a little bit, enjoyed myself a little bit too much, and missed that season. Honestly, I think mostly just because of lack of work ethic, and straightened me out. By the time I was, redshirt sophomore, my junior season, I knew what I needed to do. I knew what I wanted. I knew what the end goal was, and yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Everybody learns, the lesson eventually. So, but you had an awesome season your junior season. You led the league in strikeouts. You ahead of Shane Bieber, who like leads the universe in strikeouts now. But I saw you didn't get a single all conference thing.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that. I'm like, I don't understand. I actually was like looking at how is that not possible? Or how is that possible?
Yeah, so I had like maybe one of the dumbest preseasons of all time. At one point I had like, I don't even remember what the exact numbers were, but I had like a 1.4 ERA. I was like 4-0, and I had like 2 strikeouts per inning. I was just absolutely doing it. I had one outing against Northern Colorado. Bless their souls. It might as well have been School of the Blind. In 7 2/3 on like 96 pitches, like 85% fastballs. Just
wow.
And again, it was like probably like 90, 92, but I was just,
You got the invisible.
Yeah, so I threw really well in the preseason, and then I had a hip injury. That was just, it was an overuse injury. Basically, it's really common. A lot of guys have it. It was just my left hip labrum was torn, and so I finished the season out on it, but I wasn't quite as sharp. I wasn't able to stay as physically ready to go. So my stuff did decline a little bit towards the end of the year. So by the time we got to conference ball, I wasn't throwing quite as well. So my overall body work was really good, but my in-conference numbers were kind of so. That's why I didn't get on any of those.
Still, I feel like even the overall body work was worthy of like the at least second team or honorable mention.
Yeah, that's all good.
So let's turn it back. But before even your freshman year of college, but your freshman year of high school, you had the flow going for you on the baseball diamond as well. What kind of inspired you to just let the flow grow, and why no flow right now?
Yeah, so my hair grows out, not down. First of all, so like it's kind of a just constant struggle having super curly hair. And yeah, when I was younger, I didn't really care how I looked. I just just my hair, I just had a lot of it.
Right.
My current fiance, who was my girlfriend, 2016, I was a little clean cut then, a little more clean cut. By the time I was in college, actually caring about girls and stuff. So, actually, most recently, this past off season a year ago, we were going to a Halloween party, and we decided to go as white trash. Her dad cuts hair, and my hair was pretty long after the season, so he cut me like this little mullet. It looked kind of cool actually. So I was like, I'm gonna rock it. So we actually took it a little higher, a little tighter up here, and I got a picture somewhere. And I had this like curly mohawk, and it played. It was like a good look for me. So I kept it up until actually about 2 weeks ago. I got my hair cut and took it all off the back. So
yeah, you look all normal now. You look all civilized.
yeah, I think at one point I'll probably go back to it. So
Christian's got it going in the back too.
Yeah, I never grew out of that phase, apparently.
Yeah, I saw you turn. I saw the ponytail.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Could I pause real quick? Can I run outside, do something real quick?
Yeah. So, Kenny, enough about baseball. What's something that people might not know about you? Something that people might not think when they just met you?
Yeah. I think the first thing that came to my mind was like that icebreaker when you talk about like, you're in college classes or whatever, and they're like, hey, like go around the room, say your name, where you from, one fun fact about you. So my go-to fun fact was always that on both sides of my family, my grandparents were named Walter and Rosemary. Like my dad's parents had the same exact names. Like, just y'all think about that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
And it's not like Dave and Linda, it's
right.
Rosemary.
Right.
Yeah, that's normally like my first like my icebreaker fact. But I guess as far as like something that people don't really know about me, or like most people who just looking at me wouldn't know that I'm really into the stock market. I'm a investor. I've been trading for about a year now, and just like finance in general, it's really interesting to me. So I think that's probably the main thing that people don't really know, because I don't really like shove it in their faces or anything.
Right.
Just kind of keep it low.
Yeah, that's definitely something that you don't hear much around the clubhouse. But honestly, I'm kind of in the same realm as you are. Like I find everything about the economy, especially now, all the stuff that's going on, just fascinating. So
yeah,
we'd played together. We would have had a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
I had a buddy this past year, Phoenix Sanders, who's also pretty into it. And I keep saying this last year. I guess it was 19. So
yeah,
last year. But yeah, it's good to have some guys to talk to it about. I'm actually planning on at some point going to leverage some of my knowledge to actually like try to help guys, because I think that's a big miss that a lot of people don't get that opportunity to really fully understand how powerful understanding your finances and being able to manage them yourself rather than have someone else do it.
Right.
How powerful that can be, especially for the long term, especially for some of these kids who are coming off the street and getting signed for, let's not even talk about the draft. Let's talk about the Dominican kids, the guys who are getting these signing bonuses. And it's really easy to understand. It just takes a little bit of time. And that's something that I'm passionate about, that I think that in the long run, at some point, again, the format will be something that I have to look at. But I do think that at some point I'll be able to like almost be like a liaison between the finance guys and the players, because I can say the same thing and I understand what the financial advisors are saying, but I can say it in words that, John Doe will understand. So I think that I can provide value to guys at some point in whatever form. But yeah, for sure, something you might not be able to see by the looks of me.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Like Rosenberg.
Well, hey, man, we really appreciate you coming on. We'll let you get out of here, but best of luck as we come to the close of this quote unquote season. Well, I guess you're shut down. So, but best of luck, in the future and going into next year, and we'll be keeping an eye out for you.
Really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny.
For sure.
Now that we wrapped up the amazing guest appearance of Kenny Rosenberg, the Rays pitching prospect, let's transition into the fan question for this week from Clay Shuck, one of my good buddies here in Colorado. He asked, should the MLB look into possibly having limited fans starting in the 2020 MLB playoffs? As soon as the 2020 MLB playoffs, we're seeing the NFL have limited amount of fans, and so far, it hasn't changed yet. We're obviously only a week in, and we haven't seen a huge spike in COVID-19 results due to the NFL having fans in attendance, solely that reason. So, Christian, do you think, the MLB should possibly look into letting fans possibly have the capability of experiencing MLB playoffs here in 2020 in person?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it seems like we've got a pretty good handle on what's going on. Like,
yeah.
People are going to the store. People are pretty much going about their daily life. Why not?
Right.
You're going on an airplane. Like, I don't see what the harm would be in going to a baseball game. Obviously, limiting the capacity, similar to what they're doing on airplanes. But, like, you're going to be outside. Even if you're in a closed roof stadium, like, it's still pretty much outside.
Yeah, right.
I don't see why not. I think it'd be cool. Maybe do, I don't know, I'm just like thinking off the top of my head, maybe it'd be cool to do some sort of like raffle, where you can submit to get tickets and, maybe you get your name pulled. You just got to get lucky. That might be kind of a cool way to do it, kind of generate some hype for the playoffs. So I don't see why not.
Yeah, and I think without fans in, a situation like the playoffs in any sport really, but in the MLB in particular, we saw the Blue Jays versus, I believe it was the Rangers a few years back. You saw how intense that game was with, the Jose Bautista bat flip all the way to the dugout. You saw the crowd go nuts. And I don't think the Toronto Blue Jays would have had that type of a performance without those fans. Those fans, really bulking up their energy and, intensified the game that much more and put that much more pressure on the Texas Rangers to, get out of that inning. And with that being said, the fans really play a big part in games in that Blue Jays versus Rangers series in particular. So I believe, like, it would just be odd. It would be very odd. We're seeing even the NBA playoffs without fans. It's not as normal, but I don't think the energy inside of a NBA dome or stadium is anywhere near what we saw with, like, for example, the Rangers and Blue Jays series. So I think it would just be too different. The game would be changed so much with no fans, and the intensification of the game won't be as serious because of the no fans in the stadium.
Yeah, I think they'd still have to pump some noise and through the speakers.
Yeah, right.
Because if it was, the capacity was 40,000 and they let 10,000 in or something like that.
Yeah.
In all honesty, though, it would be cool to see that, but that might be asking too much.
Right.
So we'll see. But yeah, it would definitely be cool.
Yeah, and you mentioned like obviously the electronic noises rather than the fans filling in for that kind of fan experience. But even at that point, it doesn't match what the fans bring to the stadium. They're rumbling the stadium, rumbling the dome. You've probably been in some pretty intense games in your career where the fans are really getting into it, and it plays a big impact in the game. So I think that's a definitely underrated aspect that the MLB should probably look into. But like you said, it's definitely a long reach with reaching the tail end of the regular season and approaching the MLB playoffs for this 2020 season. So it might be too late to look into that if they aren't already. It's definitely still a possibility, but it's still a long shot. But that wraps up everything for this week's episode of the Walk It Off podcast. I appreciate all of you guys tuning in thus far for the amazing guest appearance of Kenny Rosenberg, obviously a Tampa Bay Rays pitching prospect, attended Cal State Northridge. We also talked about the Alec Mills no-hitter as well as the current playoff picture, and just obviously finished up talking about possible fans in the 2020 MLB playoffs. Christian, you have anything else to add?
That's all I got. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, most definitely. Make sure you guys drop your comments, like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram. The link will be in the description box below. And make sure you guys drop your fan questions for next week to be featured.